July 27th, 1981. Today, a 10-year-old girl was sent here as a chief researcher from Umbrella's Antarctica research facility. Her name was Alexia Ashford. I was 21. Birkin was 19. As annoying as it was, the whole Arklay complex was rampant with rumors of Antarctica Alexia. Nobody talked about anything else. She had been at Umbrella for a long time. The older guys at Umbrella knew the legendary Ashford name. Before we ever reached a dead end in our research, one of the old-timers would say, if only Professor Edward was still alive. If I remember correctly, Edward Ashford was one of the people who first discovered the starter virus and who originally planned creating the T-virus. However, he died soon after Umbrella was founded. It's been 13 years since his death, so is there really anything to gain by having high expectations of the Ashford lineage? And in fact, the Antarctic Research Center founded by his son hadn't yielded a single result. Don't people know the limits of Alexia's smarts? She is only Edward's grandchild, after all. But from the day she came, our worthless, good-for-nothing subordinates began to say, it's a good thing Alexia is here. She may be from a famous family, carry great genes within her, but nonetheless, I knew it was going to be a real hassle having subordinates with such a lack of good judgment. It's idiots like that who, if they accidentally stuck their foot in a bucket, wouldn't be able to move or figure out what to do unless someone told them. At least I could still tell the difference. However, if at that time I would have gotten upset about the whole thing, it would have just slowed down our progress on the T-virus research. Unless you can keep your cool and still be decisive no matter what the circumstances, then success will always evade you. At that time I was thinking this: by making good use of the past, then we could definitely yield good results. And if some of those old-timers, who feasibly could die at any second, then they would make great test subjects. After all, do you think it is possible to stand above the people if you can't rationally use their human resources well? However, the problem was Birkin. The way he reacted to the Alexia rumor was terrible. He never really said it, but for Birkin, the fact that he was the youngest person to ever be a chief researcher was always something he was proud of. That pride was severely injured by having a mere 10-year-old become a chief researcher. It was probably the first time someone so talented as he had ever tasted defeat. He just couldn't accept the younger girl of good lineage to be made a fool of by someone who hadn't gotten any results. Someone who had worked so far away. The fact that he couldn't get over it showed his immaturity. However, even though he was still immature, no matter what, I had to bring him back to his senses. It was during these 3 years that our research moved up to the second level. It was at this point that we fixed upon the idea of making a living biological weapon. We started to call the T-virus by a new name: zombie. However, it was impossible to get a 100% infection ratio. Within people, there is a subtle difference that the virus couldn't totally overtake. It seems compatibility was also a major factor. About 10% of the people who were injected with the zombie virus didn't get infected. And this was something that, no matter how hard we researched, we just couldn't overcome. A disease that would affect 90% of all humans seemed to me to be quite an effective weapon. But Spencer didn't see it that way. Spencer said he was hoping for a specialty virus that could easily wipe out everyone. But why in the world would he want something like that? One important characteristic of biological weapons was that they could be developed cheaply. However, the biological weapon that we were researching started to become very costly. If Spencer was in it just for the money, and he probably wouldn't have chosen to spend the extra money on researching a specialty virus that infected and wiped out 100% of its victims. It just wasn't financially worth it. Why would he want to ignore all financial concerns just to continue the research? If by changing the idea of war through biological warfare, he was attempting to monopolize all military industries, then I would have understood that. But even to this day, I have no idea what his true intentions were. But whatever Spencer's real reason was, Birkin was planning on making a biological weapon that would increase a country's military capacity. Not to just manipulate the genes of the T-virus, but also by adding other genetic code. He was planning on creating him. A military biological weapon that could annihilate those who went unaffected by the virus, as well as people who were wearing antiviral gear and equipment. This weapon was later named Hunter. However, that experience was temporarily put on hold in order to protect the test subjects from Birkin. Birkin's pace was quickened by Alexia's existence. He began to act out of the ordinary. He would stay at the lab for 24 hours straight, attempt experiments that he hadn't really thought out. I tried to use other researchers to get as many samples from the subjects before they died, but I just couldn't keep up with his pace. The head facilitator brought in a new subject as if nothing had ever happened, but she too soon died. It was hell. And within that hell, there was but one person living. The female test subject's body that continued to live on. She was already 28 years old, having lived 14 of the years in this research facility. Someone whose consciousness had been taken away by the starter virus that had been injected into her 14 years ago. Someone who, if their heart did happen to actually be alive, would only hope for death, but she continued to survive. Why was only she able to survive this long? Her basic experiment data and that of other test subjects seemed to be the same. It would still take a long time for us to solve this riddle.